Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com with the first in a series of videos going over the Dart programming language. If you're not familiar with Dart, Dart is mainly known for probably in recent times because of its one compiler called Flutter. Now the Flutter compiler, what allows you to do is to compile code, Dart code, into native Android code and into native iOS code. So you could technically use Dart as your programming language to create cross-platform mobile apps. But that's not all Dart does. Dart can do all sorts of things. You can create web applications with Dart. You can pretty much do anything with Dart. It's a general purpose programming language. In that regard, you can do anything with it. But most of the time, if you're learning Dart, it's because you want to have that cross-platform mobile access to Flutter, the compiler. Okay, but like all programming languages, the same core concepts exist. So in these videos, I'm not getting into all the mobile and web development stuff so much, more than just the core syntax. Because again, once you learn the core syntax, so how to declare variables, what to do with if statements, loops, classes, functions. Once you get that out of the way, the rest is fairly straightforward in teaching yourself. I'm not saying it's easy, but basically you understand how the language syntax works enough that you can figure out the rest. Okay, so there's two ways you can kind of work in Dart online. You can click here and try Dart, and it takes you to Dart pad, and you can literally just practice Dart right from here, right from this little console right here. Okay, or there is a REPL. Now, here's the thing with REPL on when it comes to Dart, you can't create a new Dart REPL. The only way I've been able to find is that I'm able to access this REPL by Googling it, and I'm able to work in it, but I'm not able to create a new Dart REPL. Why, I don't know. Hopefully in the future you can. But you can just work from this, and that works too. So either one of these would work as far as practicing what we'll be practicing. Now, as far as the syntax goes, if you've done JavaScript, it's very similar. Like, I found this very similar to JavaScript in a lot of ways. There's some minor differences. So instead of, you want to print words, instead of console.log in JavaScript, it's print. Okay, so that's more like Python, where Python you just type in print. But more like JavaScript, you have to, and many other programming languages, you have to put a semicolon after every command. Now, declaring variables is also like JavaScript in the sense you use the word var and you don't have to specify type. Okay, the type will be inferred by what you assign to the variable. So I can be like var a equals 5 and then print the variable. Cool. Okay, and if this is your first programming language, then just to kind of so you understand what this means, when I'm calling print, print is a built-in function in Dart. So what I'm saying is I want to call the print function, which is going to do something, and then many functions take in what's called a parameter, which means I have to give it some information for it to do its job. Print takes a string, which means a variable that's a word, that's a series of words. And you can tell it's a string because it's surrounded by either single quotes or double quotes. So it'll take the string and print what it does. It prints it on the console over here. So here, I just say var, meaning a new variable. The name of the variable is a, and that variable equals 5. So anytime I use a now, it'll represent 5 until I change it. So now if I print it, or if I run this, it should print 5. So see, hello world, because of this print command here. I declare my variable, then I print my variable 5. So it prints on the screen. Cool. Now, like this is a compile language, so like most compile languages, C++, C Sharp, etc., there is a main function. And again, why does a compile language need this? This tells the compiler where the program actually starts. So basically, anything outside or below the main function is really just things that the compiler will reference to fill in the code, but the actual sort of like what's the sequence that things happen in your programming language is based on the way they're ordered in your main. So basically, the compiler, which takes your code and turns it into something a computer can read, machine code, will sit there and say, okay, well, here's the program. So first thing that needs to happen when someone runs this program is print hello world. Then the next thing we need to do is variable a5, and then we're going to print the variable. So it does it in that order. And that's important to think because you have to realize that sometimes things don't work, not because you typed them wrong, but sometimes because you put them in the wrong order. That's always important to understand sort of how the language works. Because again, a language could either be interpreted, but like JavaScript. So JavaScript doesn't have like a main function that wraps your program. So essentially, Python and JavaScript are interpreted. That means they have the software runs the code at the time. So it just starts from the top, works its way down. While compiled languages, again like C#, Go, Dart, you have a compiler that first turns into machine code and then you run the program. So you need somehow for the compiler to know where to start, and that's what this main function does. It says this is where the program starts. So anything wrapped up in these curly braces, that's sort of your initial program. But aside from that, again, pretty much just is very similar to JavaScript. So essentially, you have your normal types of variables. So again, generally in variable world, you have integers, which is like a, which was the number 5. So this is what's called a integer variable. Okay, commenting is just like JavaScript with 2 slashes. A comment is something where the compiler will just ignore it. So basically, when the compiler compiles this code, this piece here where it says integer, because it's a comment with the 2 slashes, it just ignores it. But it's good for me because I can then read it later. Then there's doubles. Now a double is basically a decimal point number, 66.5. Okay, so that's a double, sometimes referred to as a float. There is a difference between a float and a double. Okay. Now in a language like JavaScript, there really isn't much of a distinction. In Dart, I think they do distinguish between double and float. And it just really matters for certain mathematical situations. Cool. Then there are strings. So again, a string is always in quotation marks. So this is a string. Then there's a Boolean variable, okay, which is basically Boolean just means true or false, okay. So let's make this true. And again, what kind of variable is that? A Boolean. There's only 2 possible Boolean values, true, and then there is false, okay. So if I were to print B, print C, print D, what did I do? Oh, semicolons, that's right. See, and that's a great thing about when you run a program, a good language generally has very descriptive or very specific errors that helps you figure out what you did wrong. Okay, no matter how much you program, you will make mistakes in the way you type your syntax, in the way you logically think out your program. So being able to read errors really makes life a lot easier in fixing your programming. And that's okay, ramp. I was worried because I had 2 semicolons here. There we go. Get rid of that. But again, it printed hello world, printed our integer variable 5, then it printed our double or float variable of 66.5, then it printed our string, and then it printed our Boolean variable true. Now notice I did not wrap true in quotation marks because true is not a string as in word. I could create a string that's true, but it's not the same thing as true. True is a value, it means not false. Okay, and we can test this out. Okay, different languages treat this differently, but let's double check. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable A, B, C, D, E. Yep, there we go, E. And these are horrible variable names. In your programs, please use semantic variable names, meaning variable names that represent what you're actually doing. So if I'm typing a variable that represents the height of a cat, it should be called cat height. So that when someone reads your code, they know what you're doing. Okay, variable E, we're going to say equals, does true, so there's the value of true, equal, so notice I put 2 equal signs, because 1 equal sign means assignment, meaning I'm putting this value in this variable. 2 equal signs meaning, does this thing on the right equal the thing on the left? Does true equal the string true? Okay, so we'll see how that treats it in this particular programming language. So E is going to hold the value of true or false, depending on whether this expression is true or false. So is this true equal the string true? So we have that. Let's put a semicolon and print the value, see what it is. E. Always forgetting the semicolons. Why do I do that? Mainly because I do a lot of programming in JavaScript where they don't care about the semicolon. Actually, my two main languages are JavaScript and Python. Neither were semicolons are a must. In JavaScript, I do it out of try to have a good habit. In Python, you just don't need them at all. So have bad habits. Okay, and see, as you can see, true does not equal true. Now that sounds like a mind-blowing statement, but because this is not the value of true, this is the string or word true. So again, be careful what your variables are, okay? So while you don't have to specify to the compiler, oh, this is an integer, this is a double, it does matter. So you have to be careful, like, okay, is this variable is a string? Because if I want to compare one variable to another, they really do need to be the same type. And most programming languages have functions that allow you to convert your variables from one type to another, also referred to as typecasting. So you may need to be doing that in the future. So just keep that in mind. Most things you can, once you understand the basics of the language, you can Google and figure out how to do it pretty quickly. So that's the variable story, but there's all sorts of other ways you can do Boolean variables. Okay, so let's just print a whole bunch of things. Okay, so I'm going to do print. So all these little symbols are referred to as operators. So this is my assignment operator, which means put this value in this variable. So it's saying put this value, whatever the value of this is, into this variable. That's what assignment means. This is the equality operator, which means does this equal this? Okay. But there's a bunch of other ones. Okay, so there's math operators. So we'll say 5 plus 5. Let me just copy and paste that a whole bunch of times. So that's the addition operator for adding things. Okay, I'm not going to worry about spacing too much right now. Now, see, that looks very ugly. Generally, you should indent when warranted. That means generally anytime you have a new curly bracket, so see like this curly bracket over here, anytime one of those pops up in your code, anything in that code should be indented versus the stuff outside of the curly bracket. So whether it's an if statement, a function, you want to indent. But see, I'm not creating any new curly braces yet, so I want to keep everything on the same level. It just makes it easier to read so that when I look at it, I kind of know, think of it like Inception and you're going through different layers of the dream. I want to know what dream am I in. Okay, so the subtraction operator, division operator, and multiplication operator. Then there is modulus, which is a percentage sign, and that's good for math. Let me do this. Then there's the increment operator. There's increment and then there's decrement. And all that increment and decrement, all they do is they either add 1 or subtract 1. So that means 5 plus plus just means add 1 to 5. Okay. And I have a feeling it'll still just print 5. But if it does that, I'll explain why it does that. Okay. So run the code and see all our results. Error can't assign to this. What did I do here? Where did I make a mistake? 5 plus plus. Oh, because it's not a variable. So let's use our variable. Because the way increment and decrement works is that technically it's also assigning. It's saying, okay, I'm going to add 1, and that's the new value of this variable. 5 is not a variable, so I can't do that. But we do have a variable for 5. That's a. So let me put that there. Let's run this again. Cool. Okay, so let's see how this looks. So 5 plus 5 is 10, so that works. 5 minus 5 is 0, that works. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 5 times 5 is 25, that works. 5 modulus 0. A lot of times people don't know what modulus is. Think about it this way. I always think about it is the first number is how many slices of pizza that I have. And the second number is how many people I have to give the pizza to. And the idea is that if I give everybody the same number of pizzas, how many pizza slices are left? So if I have 5 people and 5 slices of pizza, I can give each person 1 slice of pizza. And how many slices of pizza will I have left? 0. And I'll show you another example, show you what happens when it doesn't work out and there's pizza left over. But the reason you generally use modulus is to figure out if one number is divisible by another number. Generally, if I'm so basically, really, another way you can think about it is 5 divisible by 5? And if it is, you'll get 0. Okay, that's typically how modulus is used. Okay, to figure out whether a number is divisible by what. You can do it for other things, like what if you did want to know how much pizza is left over, which might be useful in certain situations. Okay, cool. So that's modulus, and that's 0 because 5 is divisible by 5. Then again, a plus plus. But notice that even though a is equal to 5, it only printed out the number 5 and didn't add 1 to it, because it did. The problem is the plus plus is after the letter a. So that means it printed out the value of a, which was 5, and then added 1 to it. So that's why in the next one, it prints out the value of a, which was now 6, and then subtract the number from it. Now, if we put the plus plus or the minus minus on the opposite side, then we should get the result that we expected. Because again, where you put the increment and decrement operator will represent how a function uses it. Does it use the value then increment it, or does it increment it then use the value? So in this case, we should get our numbers. Yep, so 6 and 5. So see, added it 1, made it 6, and then it subtracted 1, made it brought it back down to 5. So that is that. Okay. So I'm gonna stop it here for today. So that's the variables and math operators in Dart. In the next video, we'll talk more about control flow and Boolean operators. So I'll see you guys there.